Hi, my name is Cassie Landron, and this is my testimony. So my journey started long ago when I was growing up. And what's really funny is when I look back at my childhood, I grew up Catholic. But it wasn't until high school that I had this schoolmate and she invited me to her church. And so I was like, sure, why not? And when I went to her church, it was something I had never experienced. Again, I had come from a Catholic upbringing. It was very ritualistic. We went on Sunday, came back, that was that. I tried to keep my eyes open. But at that trip, going to her church and then going to this camp opened my eyes. I think to me that was like my first encounter of Jesus, because every time I look back in my life, I think about that, right? And what was really cool is that when I came to Trinity, it took me back to that time when I was in high school and I had that encounter there. So that's where it all started for me. It didn't start in my baptism and my confirmation and communion at the Catholic Church. It really started in high school. But between the time from high school, I went to the military. And it's funny because when you go to basic training, like going to church is your safe place. Everything else is like, everything that everyone tells you about basic training. But after basic and going on into the operational world of the military, I forgot about God. I just lived my life, met my husband, we got married, and nowhere was God really in the center. But even through that, I had an underlying faith. I got out of the military, moved back to Florida, and bought my house in Deltona. And so now I was ready to kind of set my roots. I had my 3 little kids and I was looking for a church. And so it just so happened that as we were driving, I saw Trinity. And I was like, oh, let me go check that place out. Nowhere do you see this is a Catholic church or this church or that church, right? So I'm thinking, oh, it's non-denominational, I don't know. But going in there, it felt warm. Right, and so that was probably back in 2018 when I came to Trinity, and I went sparsely here and there, But then here's another testimony. I encountered my dad finding Jesus for the first time, and what was crazy, he found Jesus through the radio. He found Jesus through the radio, and finding God took him away from him drinking. My dad used to drink every single day. He was very systematic. Every day he had 2 beers, and then when Friday night came, that's when the liquor bottles came out. And so, wow, it's just crazy to look back at those things. And then to see my dad now, it was such a shocker for me and my family, because growing up, we were the party house. And so when my dad made that drastic change, all of us were like, what? Oh, you're not the party. It was crazy to watch this because, my dad, he had to fight through people looking at him differently, like, hold on, what? We're not going to have this or that, But it was so worth it, and to watch him find God. And it was just so incredible to see that transformation. And then as my dad's going through this transformation, I'm coming to Trinity here and there, and I started really enjoying my time in Trinity. And I remember, I still get the feeling, but I remember feeling like nervous to go to the altar. I'm like, oh my God, crying in my corner, afraid to go to the altar. And then one day I had, my parents would always say, hey, you going to church? Especially when my dad really found Jesus. And I did. I had started going to Trinity, and my brother was still going to like a Catholic church. I didn't know how often or whatever. And I had this really saddening moment through that time, because my brother wanted me to baptize my nephews, but we had to baptize them Catholic. And what I didn't realize is all the hoops I had to go through just to baptize my nephews. So I did not get to baptize my nephews, and I felt so bad because I couldn't. I felt like stuck, like, well, you know, and then here you come to Trinity and it's like, hey, all are welcome, come and get baptized, you know. And so it's just so crazy to watch those things. And but what was really cool through that, I invited my brother and my sister-in-law to come here and to see the drastic change in them, in us together. It grew us closer as a family, and now we get to do a lot of gatherings together here at the church. All because I was like, come, you gotta come to this church. And it was just so amazing that we broke, even though it's like, oh, well, my family's tradition is to be Catholic, right? It broke those traditions. Those weren't important enough. What was important was our relationship with God. And then to go beyond that, I'm a person that's been coming to church with my kids alone for a really long time while my husband stays at home. That bothered me. And you know, you go through this phase where you're like, you gotta come to church with me or not. What kind of example, right? But then I learned through the word, you just gotta be the example. And so I started being quiet and just continued to be the example. Slowly but surely, God was making his way into the others in my life that I really wanted to be there. So, wow, so many things that God has done in our lives. It's brought me and my family closer together, and a lot of forgiveness, and slowly but surely bringing my husband to know him as well. And so I'm just so grateful for finding Jesus and stirring up this thing in me that I have been able to apply to my business. You know, I had this obsession over learning about real estate, but then when I found Jesus, now I have the obsession of reading the Bible and getting better at prayer. You know, it's one step at a time. It doesn't happen overnight, but if you continue to seek, you will find.